Hello, my name's Sarah Wise, and my new book, The Undesirables, is about the people whose lives were devastated by the 1913 Mental Deficiency Act, an amazingly illiberal piece of legislation that led to the locking away in mental institutions of people designated moral imbeciles. It's this 1913 Act, for instance, that saw the mass incarceration of women and girls who'd had a baby out of wedlock. For young lads, persistent vandalism and petty thieving could also be labelled as feeble-minded behaviour under the Act. Decades later, many of these women and men were to be discovered on the back wards of mental hospitals. They'd never been mentally ill, but were now so institutionalised that it was felt unwise to release them to live independently in the community. The Undesirables tells the story of how the Act came to be passed, and from the archives pieces together the experiences of those who found themselves put away when there was nothing medically or psychologically wrong with them. My book interweaves the big backstory of party politics, eugenics and feminism with micro-stories from across England as we see families and civil liberties organisations battling to get perfectly normal people out of permanent detention in the nation's mental deficiency colonies. So here's a short passage from my book about one of the people I discovered in the archives. Sifting through the case histories taken on by the National Council for Civil Liberties from the late 1940s to the early 1960s, several themes emerge. Firstly, it's striking that many girls or young women appear to have been dumped into the mental deficiency colony system for want of any other place for them. This was no longer even tacitly being done to prevent the breeding of the unfit. The eugenical dimension of the mental deficiency laws seems to have faded away by then. Nevertheless, the urge to incarcerate wild girls and thereby prevent the birth of illegitimate children and so decrease the number of so-called problem families is almost certainly behind this phenomenon. Trivial incidents triggered certification for a number of the girls and women, and in the National Council for Civil Liberties correspondence, it sometimes seems that adolescent girls were taking the blame for more general family dysfunction. Glenda E. was bullied by her eldest brother when he was home from the army, including a physical assault. But it was Glenda who was deemed to be problematic, and she was recalled to an institution. She had originally been sent to a colony in Yorkshire at the age of 15, when the epileptic fits that she'd suffered since the age of 8 meant that she could no longer do her job, working in a hairdresser's salon. The Hospital Management Committee wrote to Glenda's mother in June 1952 to say that they were sorry that the girl had had to return. But we think it was best, for somehow you appear to be a family that does not get on well together, and clearly this is not good for a young girl. Licence at home for your daughter has therefore proved to be a failure. Her mother replied that Glenda had done no wrong, and as I visited her on Saturday she was very unhappy and said that she'd been taken back without warning. I don't know what my elder boy wanted to provoke her for at all. Seeing that he's a local preacher, you would have thought he would have loved his only sister better than that. In her battle to have her daughter returned to her, Glenda's mother canvassed the neighbours and put together their comments for the National Council for Civil Liberties to use in its battle with the hospital's management. One of the neighbours said, "I've never known her to be a bad girl. It's terrible to say that she isn't normal." Another one said, "I've always known her to be a quiet, normal kind of a girl, never inclined to run after the opposite sex." Her mother visited her every month, and Glenda was distressed that she couldn't come home with her. Her mother claimed that she was told they're keeping her there because she's such a good knitter. "She's my only girl and ought to be a comfort to me now that her brothers are away in the army. She's a lovely girl. It's heartbreaking when I have to leave her." Glenda would never get the chance to experience adult life outside the institution. In 1953, she either jumped, fell, or was chased over the balcony banister of an internal stairwell, falling several feet and breaking her back. She died 5.5 months later of her injuries. The coroner was not happy at the conflicting explanations of what had happened, but the case was not progressed. The Mental Deficiency Act continues to reverberate into our own age. Many people have in their family tree forebears who spent years locked away. The sense of shame that this can cause can still be keenly felt by descendants. When the great age of release arrived, from the 1959 Mental Health Act onwards, it was often assumed that this was a 19th century barbarism that was being corrected, that it was instituted by a famously repressed and hypocritical Victorian culture. The Undesirables hopes to lay that particular myth to rest.